Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring, and the latest in a series which seems to be going on forever, in which I dissect all the different aspects of the new Age of Sigmar Souls Wars box set. In previous videos in this series, I've looked at the miniatures and discussed really how easy it is to get into Age of Sigmar using this Soul Wars box set, and we've looked at the fact that this set kind of straddles a gap between being an entry-level product and being something for more seasoned hobby gamers. For example, the miniatures are push fit, and they go together really nicely, really quite easily, but they're all in grey, and they don't have sculpted bases, and there's a lot of them, and some of them are a little bit fiddly. So it kind of, on the one hand, it's making concessions to make it a little bit easier to get into the game. On the other hand, it seems to be more for people who have done hobby things in the past. And it does feel like a set that's a good way to get into Age of Sigmar if you've done hobby games in the past, and also a good way to upgrade to the second edition of Age of Sigmar if you already play Age of Sigmar. But it is not, in terms of the assembly and things like that, it's not necessarily the best way if you've never done miniatures assembly before, which is why there is a product called Soul Strike on the horizon, which I'll be looking at another time. But anyway, today I wanted to have a little look at all the printed material that comes in the box, the rules, and all how to start playing the game. Some very lovely printed materials. It's kind of going to be like an overview, sort of review type thing. It's an unreview, I guess. I'm probably going to copyright this term. An unreview is where you just sort of chat about something, because most products you only review once, but you can unreview a product as many times as you like. You get a full hardback rulebook. And then you get a Start Here book, you get a Battle of Glim's Forge book, and you get a core rules book, which is basically a bit of the core book pulled out for easy reference. So we're going to look just in terms of what's in there, and also again thinking from the perspective of somebody who has never played Age of Sigmar before, and particularly someone who has never played a hobby game before. And we'll see that much like the miniatures and much like everything else with this game, this box set, it straddles a line. Like I say, it does feel like a set that's a really good introduction, but is perhaps more for people who already know a bit what they're doing. For example, you get range rulers and dice and things like that in the set, so you've got all those things that you need to play, but there's no terrain or anything like that. So if you've never played a hobby game before and you don't have any terrain to hand, that's something you have to deal with. And the rules are kind of working along that same line. It has a sort of a sense of being an introduction to the system, but it's more kind of it doesn't hold your hand and step you through the processes like the Warhammer 40,000 First Strike and No Fear box sets, which had really lovely step-by-step tutorials that you could go through that would get you playing the game in stages, so that by the time you played through all 6 of the learning scenarios, you knew all of the core rules and you knew what you were doing. You don't get that here. In fact, this Start Here book is really a little bit odd. It starts, you open it up and it immediately tells you that the core book that you get in the set is kind of your definitive resource where everything is that you need. And then it kind of gives you a very, very brief intro to the Age of Sigmar setting, which almost feels redundant when you've got the core book in there as well. And it tells you very briefly about Stormcast and tells you where you can find about Stormcast in the core book. And it gives you a little intro on the Legions of Death, with some cool artwork obviously, and again tells you where in the core book you can go to find out more about Legions of Death. So this whole book up to this point is really just, it's like a prequel to the core book, I guess. It just doesn't feel very necessary. And obviously this is supposed to say start. This is start here. You would think this would be telling you how to play. And then you get to the bit where it says start playing. And it says, it couldn't be easier to get started. Once you've assembled the miniatures in the set, grab the range ruler and dice, also included in the box, and find someone to play with. Yeah, okay. And it tells you the things you need, the things that actually are in the box, because you get dice, you get a range ruler, you get all the war scroll cards. And then it basically directs you to the core rules. Not the core book, not the the whole hardback book, but this excerpt, which is basically just covers your very basic rules to get you started. And then there's this bit where it talks about battle plans, which seems a little bit redundant, because at this point you don't know how to play the game. So why in the start playing section it's talking about battle plans and things, when at the moment you've not got any idea how the game actually plays. There's been no sense of stepping through it. So again, it feels like it expects you to know certain things. And then on the back page, there is a battle plan. There's a First Blood battle plan, which is also in the core book, in the core rules. And it says up here, this is kind of the closest you get to being something to introduce you to the game. It says, once you've built and painted a hero and a unit for each army included in this box, you can have a go at this battle plan. Which side will reign victorious, the valiant Stormcast Eternals or the ominous Nighthaunt Geists? You can return to this battle plan with bigger and bigger armies as you finish building and painting more and more of the models in this set. The larger the army you field, the longer the game will last. All you need to tackle this battle plan are your assembled models, the core rules booklet, the war scrolls for your models, some dice and a range ruler, all of which are included in this set. So that's kind of basically this then becomes your learning scenario. But to get you started, it says paint a hero and a unit for each side. One, obviously, once you've finished building and painting, that's an assumption in itself that someone's not going to play the game until they've painted. There's like an underlying sense that they're talking to people who are hobby gamers who are going to build and paint the models before they play. Anybody getting into hobby game for the first time may well be using grey unpainted plastic for quite a while, and even people who do hobby gaming. I said do. Even some people that do hobby gaming may not get around to painting for quite some time if they've got a backlog of items to paint. So, but there's sort of an underlying sense anyway that they're talking to people who already know what they're up to. And furthermore, it doesn't give you any indication of what you should start with. It says a hero and a unit, but I mean, for the Nighthaunts, do you paint up the unit of 20 chain rasps, or do you just want to paint up the 4 Reapers? For the Stormcast, they've got a big unit of hand guys, but they've also got a unit of archers, a unit of battle mages. They've got a hero on a griff charger. Which 2 heroes and which 2 units would make a good matchup? Which are the good ones that introduce you to the game? Which are the good ways to actually learn how to play through the game? And there's none of that really. You just sort of have to go with it. So you could well pick combinations of things that lead to your first practice run on the First Blood battle plan. It could well be just a horrible, miserable experience as you have your 3 battle mages or whatever getting absolutely swarmed by chain rasps and having no hope of winning, or a griff charger just ploughing through a very small unit of Reapers or whatever. So it's like an effort to make an introduction without actually going for it. Obviously, they already knew that they were going to be releasing Soul Strike, and there's another set as well that the name eludes me at the moment. But there's 2 other sets that are coming out which are more aimed at as an introduction to the game and have those step-by-step scenarios. So I guess what I'm saying is these products may have come out slightly in the wrong order. If anybody has seen Soul Wars and gone, that looks amazing, I'm going to get into Age of Sigmar, and they've rushed out and bought this, they might have been better off to hold off a week or 2 weeks, as the case may be, to pick up Soulstrike first as a better introduction. Not least because everything in Soulstrike is unique to the Soulstrike box, and can all be added into the armies that come in Soul Wars. So it's sort of a perfect stepping stone into the full Age of Sigmar experience. So yeah, it's a little odd the way they've released these products. They should have perhaps all come out at the same time. I don't know. Anyway, the core rules. So this is the new revamped 2nd edition rules. There are changes from 1st edition. There's some of them are quite minor, some of them are, I guess, more major. One of the most noticeable things for me instantly was that they now do measuring from the base of the models rather than from the model itself. When Age of Sigmar came out, obviously it was a transition product from Fantasy Battle, and most people were going to still be playing on rectangular or square bases, whilst everything new that was coming out for Age of Sigmar was on the round and oval bases, and so there was going to be some discrepancies in measuring from base to base and things like that. So the rules sort of just went, let's not worry about bases, you can measure from the model. And then I saw some silly billies playing the game, and when they were measuring and moving models in, they were stacking the models so that the bases were overlapping on top of each other, and it was quite silly. And I think most people immediately started going, well, let's just measure from the base. It's not a massive issue. And yeah, that's what's happening here. You measure from the base. Other minor things is that there's a minor change to the way initiative works. Command points have changed. I think it used to be the case that only your general could use command abilities, but now any hero can use their command abilities, but you have command points, a reserve of command points, in order to use those abilities, and that means Games Workshop can sell some little tokens for tracking command points, which is a nice little bonus for them. So it's a pretty straightforward game rule set. The core rules are pretty basic. They are very it's a line of sight is if you can see it, you can shoot it. There is a sort of cover bonus situation, but it's when you're within certain range of scenery. Yeah, there's a special hero phase, because this does, Age of Sigmar does to me feel a little bit like Hero Hammer. It's heroes play a big part in this game. More so, it feels like heroes are the main thrust of it. You get a special hero phase. Spells are now a massive thing, and a lot of spells are persistent. They stay around on the battlefield. The heroes are super strong, and they have loads of different command abilities, and there's loads of different ways that you can change them up with different weapons and things like that. So yeah, it feels a little bit hero hammery. But it's all very straightforward. Yeah, if you can see it, you can shoot it. The combat is kind of like roll to hit and roll to wound, which is all based on figures on your war scroll for your characters. So there's no chart lookups or anything. It's like if it says you hit on a 3+, you roll the dice, and if you roll a 3 or more, you hit. And then to wound, similar thing. And yeah, so the basic core rules, which is what you get in this particular book, are pretty straightforward and quite nicely laid out, easy enough to read. I think probably one of the fiddliest bits to get around is range in terms of shooting, because there's you can measure all your ranges to a single target within a unit, but you have to measure the ranges from each of them. So when you shoot with a unit, not all of a unit may shoot. Some of them will be out of range and things like that. And then also some may not be able to see, because if you've spread your unit out, and it feels like it's kind of to give the advantage to cleverly arranging your unit. If you're in a marching column or something, you're basically at a serious disadvantage because of differences in ranges and things like that. That probably is a little bit to get your head around, and it's probably one one of the sections that you have to read through a couple of times just to kind of grok it. But other than that, I would say everything it's a very straightforward game system. It's pretty much the original Age of Sigmar rule set with some minor differences. Really odd thing about terrain and things like that is they don't give you rules or anything in here for like this is heavy terrain, it's -1 to movement. This is blocking terrain and it completely blocks your line of sight, because obviously it's a sort of what you see is what you shoot type rules. But there is a table for generating special rules for each terrain piece you put on the table, which feels to me like a little bit of a level of complication that I get why they do it. It's one of those things where Age of Sigmar is a very narrative sort of a game, and they want to give you those options to create an interesting story or an interesting battlefield that has its own stories within that battlefield. So you can give scenery special rules basically, and yeah, it feels like an extra layer of complication. This is something that I think Age of Sigmar is quite interesting, because the core rules are so very, very simple, but it very, very quickly starts layering on special rule on top of special rule on top of special rule, and I'm not sure I like that. And I think, especially for new players, it's probably a good idea to ignore a lot of the special rules that come in the rule set, in the full rule set. Anyway, so this is the once you get to that section, by the way, once you get here, past the terrain section, you get into the battle plans and things like that, and it starts talking about how the war scrolls are laid out and that sort of information, and and then it's got this section on creating war scroll battalions, which feels out of place in this booklet because it doesn't really give you enough information on how to what you're actually doing with that sort of advanced army building rules. And again, advanced army building rules that I don't really like. I very much enjoy sort of building an army the way I want to build an army, and then they've kind of got these layers of rules that you know, when you're creating your army, you can create certain battalion organizations which give you extra special rules again that go on top of your other rules that you already have, and then there's allegiance abilities and things like that. The number of special rules is quite considerable, because you get every unit has got its own special rules. Every hero has got his own special rules. Every hero also has command abilities and may have magic weapons. And then you may have battalion abilities. You may have these War Scroll Battalion special abilities. You may have allegiance abilities. You may have, if you choose to fight in a special realm, there's obviously all the different realms of the Age of Sigmar world universe. Each one has its own special rules, which makes magic work in different ways or gives different benefits, or there might be things like a sort of rolling fog that it obstructs things and stuff like that. So there's those, and then you can give each terrain element a special rule, and it feels like it's a special rule on top of special rule on top of special rule. The good thing is, of course, is that because they're layers, you can peel them all away. You can go right back and just have whatever units you want on the table, which each have their own special rules, and then you can have a hero who has the command abilities that hero has access to, and just go with that, and just have terrain just be blocking terrain for blocking line of sight or whatever. And just play that way, and then gradually introduce extra layers of interest. This Battle of Glimsforge book is basically fluff with a Griff Charger on the front. It covers the two armies basically. It gives you the story of why these two armies are having at it. It literally just tells you what each type of unit is, what they do. It's not rules, it's just background. It's very nice to have. It's a really cool, it's kind of like sort of a condensed version of if you were to buy the the battle tomes, whatever they're called, for each army. So you have that sort of background information on what you're doing and why you're doing it. It's quite nice. It's particularly good for role players who want to better understand why they're doing what they're doing, what these units do, why they're fighting. And obviously there's full painted miniatures, which are nice for inspiration. If you're new to painting, don't immediately try to emulate these painting guides unless you're naturally gifted, because unless you are naturally gifted, and therefore I hate you, you're never going to get them looking like that. So they're inspiration. They're something to aim for down the line. Don't ever worry don't ever look at a painted miniature and go, I'll never be able to paint that well, and therefore I shouldn't get into hobby gaming, because I've been in hobby gaming for decades and I can't paint for toffee. I use the laziest, quickest ways to get things painted and looking half decent that I can. Anyone who has watched any of my channel will know that is the case. That is so. And at some point I'm going to do some video on painting Nighthorns, and I'm going to see if I can come up with some lazy ways of using the new technical paints to get them looking half decent without a lot of effort. So these are all the Nighthorns, and then there is one page right at the back which you could miss if you just sort of flick through that and go, I'm not interested in reading that. You might miss this, but there's points. This is the points for the units in the box set, which you need if you're going to do a pitched battle. If you're going to do a game where you pick your points value and play to that points value. That's what you need there. And then there is the core book, which is a hefty tome and absolutely fantastic. It's a beautiful product. It's really, really nice. It's got super awesome artwork. It's got surly Sigmar. It's got great big dragony things. And if we look in the contents, this is all fluff. This is fluff about the world. It talks about the mortal realms, and then we go on to, this is page 118. We talk about the factions of the mortal realms, and then all this is more fluff. We're just talking about the different factions that are available, and it's really interesting stuff. It's the history of the world you're playing in, and if you like to role play your war games, if you like to do narrative campaigns, if you like to do narrative battles, or you just like to give each army you've got a storyline, which I kind of like doing that. Particularly with skirmish games, I like to have a sense of a story behind my characters and what they do. That's kind of essential reading. It's just really, really, really fun, interesting stuff. I haven't read it all yet. I just haven't had the time. But it's all good stuff, and it's really nicely illustrated, and so on and so forth. And then page 220, you get to Fire and Thunder, and that's where you actually get to your rules. And the interesting thing is, Battles in the Mortal Realm starts on page 222. You've got your introduction, then you've got the core rules, and then you've got your First Blood battle plan, 237. That section, that's the core rules booklet that they excise and give to you separately. That's this bit. And that is really all you need to read to get playing. Everything else after that is bone. All of this is more rules, but this is those. This is the layers I was talking about. It's those extra things you can add on. I was going to show you this book in a little bit more detail, but we're already running long. I've been talking for a long time. But it's a really nicely put together book. Again, it's quite an imposing book for anybody new to hobby gaming, but that's why I like the fact they're giving you that core rules booklet separately. One, it's just easier to have it on the table while you're playing, because a big hefty hardback book, it takes up a bit of space, and you don't want to damage it, you don't want to spill a drink on it or anything. And that's a really cool picture. This picture has been around for a while, it's been used a bit, but it is very cool. I like it a lot. Yeah, so it's quite an imposing book, but it's nice that it's not all rules. It's also nice that the rules that are there, most of them are layers that can be stripped away. The artwork is uniformly excellent and is the kind of artwork that you can sort of look at for a long time. Some of the imagery, I mean, pictures like this, you can just look at those for a long time and you're going to keep seeing stuff. You're going to keep seeing things in the crowds. And everything is larger than life in Age of Sigmar. I mean, it was larger than life in Fantasy Battle way back when. Age of Sigmar just ramped up to 11. Because why wouldn't it? So, this is all stuff about realm gates and there's a lot of reading here. It's a big old hefty book. Lots of history about the Necroquake and the rise of the Night Haunts, who are irked. So yeah, then you've got the Mortal Realms. It's got sort of maps and diagrams and this sort of stuff. Anybody who likes maps and topography and sort of fantasy settings, they're going to get a lot out of this book. Assuming they have at least a vague interest in the Age of Sigmar settings. I know a lot of people still don't like Age of Sigmar. A lot of people still rue the day that Fantasy Battle went kaboomy, but I like Age of Sigmar. I like it a lot. I think it's big and noisy and colourful and bombastic and silly and funny, and it kind of just it's not the Fantasy Battle I knew when I was little, but the Fantasy Battle that I knew when I was little was silly, and it had Grom the Paunch riding down the mountain on his chariot with his big fat belly sticking out, and the goblins were funny, and everything was humorous, and you had Warhammer Quest, which had spells which were incantations taken from old Cadbury adverts, and it was silly and funny with little knowing winks, and I feel like we're kind of in that same mindset again after a long time of being very po-faced and serious. Age of Sigmar can be serious, but it's also I think it's funny too. I think it's so ridiculously over the top that a lot of the times it has to be knowingly funny. A lot of the choice of names of things, and it just feels like it's all done with a little cheeky wink. So this is one of those pictures I was talking about that the more you look at it, the more you see. It's really cool. The amount of artwork in this book alone, if you like fantasy artwork, again, and don't absolutely, if you don't throw up in your mouth at the thought of Age of Sigmar, this is a really nice book just for just crazy artwork. Here's a demon fighting a dwarf blimp thingy. The Caradron overlords. And it's got all the new races, like the Deepkin riding around on their magical sharks and whatnot. They're crazy. Seraphon. I'm hoping Games Workshop are going to deal with Seraphon again soon, because I think they need some new miniatures. I could see myself building a Seraphon army, because it's basically dinosaurs, and I like dinosaurs. My little baby boy likes dinosaurs, and I can see myself building an army of dinosaurs. But I would like to see them sort of get a new swathe of miniatures, something new and crazy. Lots of nice miniatures, painted miniatures, all stuff to make you go, ooh. Forces of Chaos. Obviously, you know, I've flicked through this much of the book and we're still just dealing with factions and what the world has to offer. Nurgle. I could see myself building a Nurgle army as well. I love Nurgle. Skaven. I could see myself building a Skaven army. I love Skaven. Oh, Brayherds. I love Beastmen. I could see myself building a Beastman army. It'd all be unpainted. It'd just be swathes of grey plastic, because I'd never have the time in a million years to paint it all. But here he is. I love this guy. He's so cool. Horticulus Slimux. On the gigantic snail. This is what I was talking about, that humour. I mean, Nurgle has always been very, very funny. But dangling the Nurgling in front of the snail to make the snail move, and look at the snail's expression. He really, really wants that Nurgling. I love it. I just think it's absolutely brilliant. Makes my day, stuff like that. Loads more miniatures and stuff. Forces of Death. Yep. Flesh Eater Courts. See, it's. I mean, one of the things Games Workshop has in its favour is, even though it blew up the old world, even though it got rid of Fantasy Battle, it ported across all that stuff. That history is still there. That history is still part of this world. This isn't like a new thing that they've just started from scratch. It's part of a continuation of that timeline. So, you know, the races are still there. They may have different names and things, but they're still all there, and they're all still usable races. And it's just an evolution of that universe. That's a massive spider with some goblins on the back, or snotlings, grots, or whatever they're called now. So anyway, here we go. Fire and Thunder. This is where you get to the actual rules, and this is exactly the same as that other insert, and this is where I put my little ribbon so that I could cut straight to the chase if I needed to. So anyway, so that's the bit that's lifted straight from that other booklet, and then you get into Conquest Unbound, and this section, the rest of the book, are those layers, so all the onions at the back. So you have allegiance abilities. So if you have an army, there's order, chaos, death, and destruction. And so if you've got an army that's entirely of order, then you get these extras. You have access to extra special command traits, which get layered on top of your general, your hero's command abilities. You get special battle traits that is for your whole army. You get access to special weapons, and that's the same for chaos and destruction and also death. So that's a whole extra set of rules that you can apply to your army. You have to, if you have to agree that you're going to use them with your opponent, but it's a way of adding an extra level of character, an extra level of story to your army. And then the same thing again. This is the Realms of Battle, where each realm, like Shaiish and Akshi, adds extra special abilities again for that particular battle that you're fighting in that particular zone. So if you're having a battle in the Realm of Death, then you have these extra special rules come into play. And again, you don't have to use them, and certainly wouldn't recommend you start using them straight away, because the more special rules you add into a game, the more special rules you're going to forget in the middle of a game. But once you've kind of got to grips with the game and you're well deep into playing, these are ways that you can just sort of spice up a game and add an extra little special something. Endless spells is a new thing for 2nd edition. The spells sort of linger around. They have their own cool, I say cool, some of them bloody stupid, but they have their own miniatures that sort of move around the board. One of those things that it would have been nice if there had been like some card tokens or something, just for people who didn't necessarily want to buy and paint massive, great big miniatures to represent their spells. But there we go. And then you've got the different styles of play. You've got open play games, which is kind of like chuck down whatever you've got to hand and just see how it goes. You've got a series of battle plans for open play. Let's just skip through those because they're all pretty much the same. Then you've got narrative games, which are the ones where you recreate stories, either your own stories or stories from different books or whatever. Historical battles and famous events. That's a very busy table, isn't it? There's a lot going on there. It's got like running campaigns. And then there's a section on sieges, which is quite cool. If you wanna run some siege warfare. I don't know if the last edition of Age of Sigmar had siege warfare or not. If it's a new edition, it's a cool edition because it's got rules for starving and tunneling under things and that sort of stuff. Narrative battle plans. All of those, and then match play. This is where you have this is your sort of tournament type game where you evenly match two armies and you go at it to see which is the best. And then the more battle plans again. And of course, each battle plan has its own special rules as well. So there's lots of layers of special rules. And then there's battle strategies that can get introduced to award victory points. So there are lots of ways to complicate what is, at its heart, a very, very simple game. Age of Sigmar, the actual rules, it's a couple of pages. It's very, very simple, and that's cool. And then, yeah, there is an option to make it as complicated as you want, really. You can just keep adding in those layers of special abilities, but you don't have to. There's no section in the rules sort of for scenery, and that's because scenery seems to have its own war scrolls. If you buy an item of scenery, it comes with a war scroll. That's fine if you're buying Games Workshop scenery, but I believe you can get most of the war scrolls online for free as a free download. But if you're adding your own scenery and stuff like that, you have to sort of find an approximation on the war scroll, or just sort of fudge the rules that way. It would have been nice to have had, I think, a fleshed out section on types of scenery and things that are common to a battlefield. I mean, it would have been nice to have a section on, trees and forests and woods and stuff. Maybe that's unnecessary, but it just feels like it's an omission that should be in there. But anyway, that's a quick look at the humunga chunky core book, the Battle of Glim's Forge, which is just history relating to this box set. The core rules lifted straight from the core book, and the Start Here booklet. It's a lot of paperwork, it's a lot of content, it's a lot to get through. It may seem like quite a daunting prospect to anybody new. I think it makes an effort to try and be a bit welcoming. The fact that it has a Start Here book and a separate core rules supplement, that's a nice gesture. but it still feels very much like it's sort of saying welcome hobbyist to the new game, rather than welcome new hobbyist who's never done anything like this before. That's how it feels anyway, but that's not a problem in itself. That's not a knock against the game. They could have done away with these entirely if they wanted to, because this is the full box experience. People who are buying this box have to expect they are getting the full core game experience, and those other box sets are coming out for people who are new to gaming, so those other options are going to be available. It's just something to be aware of. It's something to be aware of, that this doesn't have that sense of we're going to take you by the hand and we're going to guide you through this process. It's very much a case of you're a hobby gamer, you've got loads of scenery and stuff, you've played games like this before. This is Age of Sigmar, and this is Age of Sigmar Soul Wars. And that's all I've got to say for now. Thank you very much for listening. I've talked for far too long again. I will see you all again soon. Bye bye.